Hi everyone, and welcome to God's Gifts of the Six Senses. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about, or I'm going to ask you the question, are we losing our senses and our inner compass, what I call our inner navigation system, to modern science, technology, and medicine? So, what do I mean by the six, or God's gifts of the six senses? So I believe our senses, like our sight, our hearing, our smell, our taste, our touch, and even what we might call our gut instincts or our intuition, are God's gifts. It's our inner navigation system to life. It's our inner compass, right? I believe that modern science, modern technology, and even modern medicine has actually started to disable us, kind of stop us using those gifts to the optimum. And some of those gifts we've actually kind of completely eliminated. And if we think about way back, and if you think about how people survived and how people went through their day and would, how could you say, monitor their health and well-being, it was very much about being more attuned to what their body was telling them. So for example, basic things like knowing when your body is tired, knowing when your body needs water or when it needs food. These are actually very, very basic things, but actually it's these simple things that many people struggle with every single day. So if we look at overconsumption, why is there so much obesity? Why is there so many addictions? Why are people not drinking enough water? Why are people so unhealthy when, we're living in a more modern world? Most people have more things than they ever had, okay? And even if people have, financial struggles, we still, in some ways, have more choices. Or we've had maybe than, the last 18 years, that totally contradicts things. But how have we got to this stage, right, where many of us don't even know that we're not hungry, we're actually stressed, we're actually dehydrated, we actually need more sleep, right? I believe that we all have an inner GPS system that can help us make more healthier decisions every single day. Those are spiritual decisions. They are good mental, emotional, and physical decisions about our well-being. But what has changed that? What stops us making those decisions? What gets in the way of us making those better decisions, right? I mean, if you think about, I mean, I'm 52, right? And if I think about my parents or my grandparents and the access to things that we've had compared to our ancestors, we've had access to so many different types of fruit, vegetables, food, textiles, technology, so many things. We have access to things, and we also have lots of more, eliminating what's happened the last 8 months. We've generally had more choices about so many things in our life that we can do, right? In certain aspects, we have choice. We have lots of choice, right? But why do we make so many basic mistakes? Why are we still so unhealthy? Why are people so stressed and anxious? And one of the things I do believe is because they don't know how to listen to their own body. They don't know how to cue into their own intuition. They've given their power away to someone something or lots of things. So I believe we are losing our senses, our inner compass to modern science, technology and medicine. And I think we've done it for a while. But I think the last 18 months has actually alarmed me, because I have actually seen that how much this is to an even higher degree than I ever imagined, right? So I'm going to rewind a little back, and I know some of you that have listened to me maybe think that I repeat certain things about myself, but obviously you've got to remember there's people, new people watch these videos all the time, but my own health, my own journey, I had to come to the fact that a lot of the things that happened to me, even though there was things that happened externally to me, right? A lot wasn't just about the choices I made, but things that happened to me that impacted my health. I had some bite me at 14. It would take 30 years to find out it was tick bites. And when I seen a picture of what a tick bite, I was shocked, because it was exactly the picture, what I had, and the doctor didn't know what it was when I was only 14, and then my legs all swelled up. I was not very well. I also would have a long history of lots of things happen in mainstream medicine where things would actually make me iller, and it was an example of where I think that we have to be careful with science, technology and medicine, where sometimes it goes too far, and also where common sense goes out the window. So for example, I suffered mercury toxicity, and I'll look at some of the symptoms I have now, and you would think definitely it's related to that, and probably the Lyme's. But if you look at mercury, for example, we have been using mercury in the UK for I don't know how long for dentistry. And it's interesting that many countries in the world have banned mercury and amalgam from the teeth because it's so toxic. I was accidentally injected by mercury up a root canal, not up the tooth, but actually the root canal. And interestingly, would find out very quickly that my eyes started to seriously deteriorate above that area, my left eye. I have to add that there was already a rare eye condition, but I suddenly had a hole. It was soon be discovered later on, but there was something went on very quickly. My eye pressure was dropping to extremely low. It was most of the specialists that saw me, and I've seen many specialists, I was used for scientific research, and they'd never seen anything like this. And they kept asking me, "You sure you weren't in a car accident?" No, I wasn't in a car accident at that point, and I didn't have, like, some piece of glass and put in the back of my eye, but I had this incident where the mercury, and it was right on the nerve up to the eye. Now, within a year of this experience, I was also given a fluorescent angiogram because they were starting to, things show up. There was something not right with my eye. And I took the toxicity of the fluorescent. I had a very, very bad reaction to it. It made me very ill, and it made me very ill for months. And to be honest, I always felt that it was another, almost like a hammer in my health. It was like I really didn't seem to ever recover after the mercury toxicity, which caused me, it seemed to trigger this flu type illness, and then lots of things happened. And I would go through a lifetime where I was never a pill popper, and I did everything I possibly could not to rely on modern medicine, and not to take self-responsibility for my well-being. And I had to start listening to my body. But I had lots of circumstances where, for example, I needed dental treatment. And another one of the things I did is try to get my mercury, all the rest of the mercury removed. But I had lots of rare dental issues, and I had to keep seeing dentists. And I would have some horrendous experience with anaesthetics. And nobody wanted to know until I had a very serious experience. And then I was informed that I should never get a non-molar anaesthetic. And then after that, every dentist, I had to go to different dentists for a variety of reasons, and there was only a handful that actually listened to me. Quite a few gave me the anaesthetic again, and then I would be really ill. Some would take it seriously, some were horrified, and they hadn't listened to me. And then the most dangerous situation happened when I was given a mistake, and this dentist had always gave me the right anaesthetic, but had forgot, gave me it, and basically hurt a nerve that had already been hurt, and my jaw was locked, and it'd be locked for that. It was at least over 10 days I was left with a locked jaw. So basically I couldn't eat or even drink. Now I managed just to drink, I'm saying that, but what I mean is the whole jaw locked into trismus, and I couldn't move. And I was left for over 10 days, and I unknown, well, I kind of did know something was going on. I thought I had a bone infection. I was sure I had a bone infection. And it was eventually taken in with sepsis. And it was a whole experience that taught me how much science has got a bit wrong when they don't listen to the patient. And when, you know, it's like, also I found practitioners were very much conditioned of just of what they had experienced or what they'd been taught. They didn't always listen to alternate perspectives or consider. And it was very, for me, unfortunately, it led to some horrendous medical experiences and long-term medical harm. Now, a lot of people said I should have sued the medical system, and sometimes I wonder now maybe I should have, because I realised that nobody learned out of that situation, because it rarely the people that harm you actually see the damage that they actually cause. And, you know, sometimes it's just they're misinformed. But this is not just about, this is just to show you one tiny aspect of where I think we give our power away and we give our senses. And there's a lot of things along this path that my gut instinct and also my senses knew that things weren't right for me, right? But we're living in a society at the moment where we're not, it's like we've lost that aspect. It's almost like we're not really supposed to know what's right for us, right? And I don't think it's meant to go that way. Well, there's some elements I think may have went that way, meant to be, but obviously any person, it goes to be a doctor or nurse. Well, most people want to be a doctor or nurse are coming from a very caring, compassionate perspective, right? We do see some, unfortunately, come in just for money, but most people come in because they genuinely want to make a difference. And they want to come in and do no harm first. But sometimes they come in and things happen and they're put under a lot of pressure where they're not allowed to do what they're supposed to do. And modern science, I suppose, is the same. People go into many jobs, technology, and they want to do good or want to, you know, create or do what they enjoy doing or they're good at doing. But sometimes these things can get lost. I believe that some things that, like science, for example, and modern medicine and even technology, sometimes they're trying to be like God. And because of this, we're losing the humane and the spiritual aspect of things. And many of it is designed to take the human and the spiritual aspect out of us. And maybe some people don't realize, maybe some people do. But the reality is, as human beings, we're not robots. We're not here to be just conditioned. We're not here to be controlled. And we're not here to be programmed. We're here to live a human experience. We're spiritual beings living a human experience. And we're here to use our senses and to use our own GPS system, our own inner navigation system, our inner compass, which also includes our moral compass for what we feel and what we feel is spiritually right. That's part of a human fundamental right, and it's part of our sovereignty as a human spiritual being. But are we giving so much of ourselves away to science, technology, medicine, that it's now that we are now being treated as if we are robots. And also we're seeing society now that it's creating robots, and it's creating things to, in many ways, control us. And to me, I believe things are getting out of hand. And when we look at the last 18 months of, I'm not going to say the P word, but I'll say the end of it, endemic, is that I think this shows an example of how conditioned most people are in society, are programmed and do not even realize it, and actually have lost the connection with their inner GPS system. Now, I'm lucky in one aspect, right? I have lots of health challenges, and sometimes when you have lots of health challenges, you have what we call spiritual, you have maybe some people might call spiritual experiences. Sometimes it's a spiritual crisis that then takes you to a spiritual experience. I've had a near-death experience, so that also gave me a different perception of life. But I'm also highly empathic and highly sensitive. And basically that just means that one of my gifts is, and some people look at it as a curse, but it is that I am very finely tuned to my surroundings, so I can pick up a lot more things than other people. I could feel energy very acutely. So it meant, as a healer, it was a very useful gift. I'm very highly intuitive. Some people might call me slightly psychic. Sometimes I have premonitions. Sometimes I just know things. But I have learned to use my inner navigation system. But like most people, I'm still part of the modern world, and I believe that we can all be using that in a navigation system 1,000 times even more than what we're actually using it. And I believe that the fact that we don't use it, and that we're not using our senses to the correct degree and the right balance degree, we're actually in a state of disempowerment. And I believe that when we start taking back our gifts, our God's gifts, which includes the 6 senses, we can move from disempowerment to empowerment, right? So how can you start using our 6, I've put 6 senses here, it should have been 6 senses, but it is 6 senses as well, because that's the one that gets a bad rap, right, from science and logic. But actually, I believe is one of your most powerful gifts. So how can you use your 6 senses and your 6th sense to make healthier and more spiritual decisions every day? I'm going to talk about that, and how you can become more consciously aware of your sovereignty as a human and spiritual being. Well, first of all, you have to recognize and accept the circumstances we're in at the moment. The reality is, no matter if you like it or not, 99.99% of human beings at the moment are being programmed by a box, or lots of boxes. And what are those boxes? They are computers, they're mobile phones, they're TV, there's computers at work, they're computers for entertainment, they're the computer that you go to use, or the device that you use to access social media. And then we're also the conditioning and the programming we get from social media. There's lots of forms of programming. Even every film, TV program, news thing that you watch has a form of programming. What do I mean by that? So if we imagine that anything that we watch on a visual screen, or we look at a visual screen, is telling us a story, right? And it hooks us in, and it triggers our emotions through colours, smells. Well, obviously smells it doesn't, but it evokes images to imagine. So for example, if you see a pineapple, right, and you're seeing this beautiful pineapple and someone's cutting it, right, on television, and it's showing you all the senses, like it's making out, and it's like somebody's eating it in their mouth and they're tasting it, right? You hear the sound of the pineapple cut. What that's doing is creating experience. And often unconsciously, you'll not realize it, but you actually might, this is a power of visualization. It can trigger in memories. So if you know what a pineapple tastes like or smells like, you might smell it. Lemon's a good example because most of us, the lemon's quite a strong smell. So if you take even someone through a visualization and use a lemon, it's a really good one to evoke all the different emotions and even the taste of lemon, right? That's in your mouth, right? This is how we evoke memories and how we use stimulus to make people react and respond to things. Every single day, no matter if you recognize this or not, you are being conditioned and you've been manipulated to respond a certain way to the media that you're reading, the media you're listening to, right? And, TVs, videos, whatever. So if someone wants to, for example, write a film and they want you to have a certain point of view about that story. So say, for example, there's a point of history and they want you to believe a certain narrative of what happened in history. They will do certain things in a film to help you connect with certain characters and believe certain characters and believe certain things. That is the power of media. And do you know what it's all based on? Psychology, right? And how the mind works, mind and behavior, right? Now, because of that, we don't even realize it, and we give our power over and our beliefs over to media every day, and we believe what it tells us. And believe me, marketing and media can be very clever at manipulating you to believe what it does, and it uses powerful imagery. And I'll give you an example, some things that might get you to stop and think about. So over the last 18 months, I've watched, as someone that I studied colour therapy, and I was somebody that went down the design route and dressmaking route when I was younger. So part of that involved the use of colour and things. I also studied aromatherapy, so that was a bit, in scents. I studied marketing. I understand psychology. I studied psychology, so I understand lots of things about the mind and the human psyche, right? And how easy it is to condition us as humans and to certain responses, and how by seeing certain imagery, we can believe something even though what we maybe see is not true, right? And this is why we have all our senses, and okay, some of us may have some of our senses disabled, or we don't have them as strongly as others. That sometimes when we have some senses disabled, the other senses are heightened to help us, right? Now, I remember a friend of mine used to say to me, she felt that my intuition and my senses were so strong because of the physical challenges that I had. She may be right, but I also know from as long as I can remember as a child, I seem to be very acutely aware of things that other people weren't aware of, right? But the reality is, I had to learn how to really hone in because of my health, and I realised for lots of reasons, through my own experiences, that other people didn't always have the correct answers and they weren't always right. And unfortunately for me, it was survival. It was to do with survival, with having a lot of rare medical challenges that mainstream medicine didn't understand. I was one of these people that had to go and I had no choice. I was going to be left and not have a life unless I went in and equipped myself with as much research as I could. But also understood, when you look at research, there can be 5 or 6 different opinions to things, right? And often doctors and specialists do not have the time, if you're not their specialty and if you don't fit into a category, they don't have time to look at you. And also, you can also be someone that it doesn't fit into the box of what they've been taught. So it doesn't and they do not want to face that. If what they've been taught all along, suddenly they have a situation that shows that maybe that's not correct, then they can't handle it, right? So there's something then makes them realize that maybe everything they've been taught up to now is wrong, right? And when that happens, that creates a lot of cognitive dissonance. And we've seen a lot of cognitive dissonance the last 18 months. But what we've also saw is where people just take for face value what they're told, or do what they're told to do for certain reasons within certain circumstances, right? And when they're shown certain things, or certain things presented a certain way, right? Like data, for example. So sometimes when we're taught certain things and we're seeing certain things, it triggers certain response. Now, that's what media is very good at. Newspapers know how to do this. Television knows how to do this. Politicians know how to do this. They even know what to wear and how to stand and what words to say to evoke certain responses, right? But the reality is that's how technology is formed now. And what happens is, I believe that we know so much about the human mind and the human psyche, and that certain people in governance and certain people in certain, how could you say, places of power, it suits them if they can control and manipulate the masses. And it suits them to control if they can get you to buy from their company instead of someone else, because it gives them more power, more freedom. And the more that someone gets richer and richer, and maybe other people are lower on the pecking order, it gives them a sense of power, status, and they can call the shots, right? But what we're seeing in society is that, and probably the last 40, 50 years, in many ways, we've had more choices, that we could make more choices. But there's always been something other, there's been other things that have maybe kept us down. And I believe some of that is the fact that we're discouraged from using our inner navigation system. We're more encouraged to hand over our power to someone else, that always someone else has more information, or someone else knows what's best for us, right? The best thing that happened to me was to start learning about my own health, and to start taking my power back, and to start learning more about what my body needed, right? And not to rely on other people, right? Yes, I've made, you do sometimes you go to other people and things can happen, but most of the time I try and take as much responsibility, and I take an active part in being responsible for what I put in my mouth, what I do, what I don't do. But the reality is most people every day do not take self-responsibility. And I do think it's partly to do with conditioning, because many people are conditioned that they are not responsible for their health. They actually believe it's their doctor or their medical practitioner that is responsible for their health decisions. They don't seem to equate that they have a part to play in it. And one of the things that we've seen the last 18 months, no matter what you agree with or disagree with, is we've seen a situation where we've been kind of coerced into certain decision making, right? And told certain things which were not always facts and not always served honestly and said the correct way. There was no transparency, and there's still not transparency. And people, it's a form of manipulation when people are not given all the information, when they're not saying things clearly, and they've been served information a certain way, a way that suits the people it's given it, not in the best interest of the person that's receiving it. That is manipulation. It's a lot, I could say a lot worse, right? But the reality is that's disempowerment, that's control, right? And we can make all rational decisions why governments and politicians, and even science does that. You could go into the doctors and a doctor could say to you, oh, this will help you. But he might not tell you that it might cause you this, 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 and this as well. But so either is it really going to help you now? It might be different if he says, well, this could help you with this, but right, but not, you're not always told that. You're not told the other things. Also, as human beings, because we have been very conditioned, and there is some people that are very conditioned that certain people with title automatically do, they have this power over you, or they know everything, or this assumption. There's also a lot of assumptions when people have titles, right? That you automatically think, well, they must know so much more than you do, right? And they must have my interests at heart. They must know what's best for me. And that's actually not always the case. And it doesn't mean that it's always coming from a negative perspective, that the person means harm. It may be that they just don't have the time to do the research, or they don't have the time to ask you enough questions or know enough about your body specifically. Or they have believed someone else that's taught them, and they believe what they're told. And I came to realize this. I just had so many, I mean, the amount of experiences that I had that I was put in dangerous situations where I was very ill was unbelievable. The amount of, particularly I would say dentists was really interesting for me, because I had some horrendous, what you would call, you wouldn't call it like a normal allergy, like an anaphylactic shock, but it was other horrendous physical experiences on anesthetics. And it wasn't until a friend of my sister's, who was a dentist, who examined me after I had an injury. I had basically, my jaw was put slightly out and nerve damage, and I was given an anesthetic that I was clearly should never have been getting used on me. And he took me to the side and went, no way, you can't allow this to happen. He says, Eileen, I do know, he says, the problem is it's ego. And, you know, ego is a big problem in lots of industries, because people do not want to be seen as if they don't know, or they're wrong about the information, or they've made a mistake. But ego can get in the way. And he explained that very early on in his career, a little girl had nearly died on his table, and how that situation made him look at everything he did in his work completely differently. And that sometimes, if an experience, even though that was horrific, it made him a better dentist and a more safer dentist. And we can see this where it used to be that lots of aspects of well-being and healthcare is do no harm. And it's one of the reasons why I know many people that were health, you know, nurses or doctors and whatever, and left the industry, or scientists, health scientists, and left because of ethics, you know, reasons that were not right, and they couldn't be part of it anymore, and they felt the do no harm was being omitted from, you know, that basic medicine. I mean, I've worked with quite a lot of holistic doctors, and a lot of them left. A lot of them have been maybe more mature doctors, and most of them just couldn't handle it anymore, and they were shocked what was going on. But modern medicine is just one aspect of where we give our power over. But as I say, technology is very much about conditioning. Science, we look at science now, and some people are really literally acting as if they're God. And one example, and it's not a nice thing to talk about, and I'm just going to briefly talk about, is what's it called now? Oh, God, I forgot the name of it. It's been talked a lot in Congress in America recently. Gain of function research. And if you look into some of the horrendous aspects of some aspects of gain of function research, let's put this, they do things that most of us would think it was Frankenstein, horrific things that they do with embryos, body parts. And to me, it's inhumane. And this is where the aspect of people trying to be God and they forget that they're not God comes in, right? Every single one of us are spiritual beings first. We come in as a human, but underneath and inside, there's that spiritual aspect. We are spiritual beings, right? And we are all sovereign beings. And that means that you're important. You are important. And no other human being has the right to tell you what to do in the respect of making decisions that is right for you and is right for your body and is your moral compass to make decisions from a moral perspective, right? But we've seen in the last 18 months how media, politics, governments have coerced and manipulated certain narratives, but not allowed people to see the whole picture. And that is an example of where people start taking people's power and they use conditioning and manipulation and start using our senses in a way that they're manipulating us. So they're letting us see only maybe a certain amount of data, letting us see images. And I was going to go back to, I've missed something I was going to say to you. So for example, imagery. I saw a few things that just opened my eyes to the political world, the government and the news. And some of this was imagery that was used to say that people, I think it was India, they were saying, because I have a girl that used to do some work for me in India now. She's actually got a PhD in pharmaceuticals, so you'll get, you know, she's not just someone that just does anything. So she's coming and she works in the pharmaceutical industry, but she was wanting to move into a different area, so she done some work for me. And for example, in India, there was media coming out in the UK saying that all these people were lying down in the street and they couldn't get into the hospital with a certain thing, right? And you could see this picture where people were lying on the street. And then what came out was other media or other, how could you say, more honest media, actually showing you that that picture was in fact an image from several years ago, and the image was actually from a gas. It was like a gas had been leaking somewhere, and that's how people were lying out in the street, right? It's a hospital leak or something, right? So they were outside the hospital. So that was the media manipulating. Then I saw another video that was even more shocking, and it was in India. And it was a presenter standing, like a TV presenter, and it looked like these black bags as if it was bodies lying out in the street, right? And they were presenting. Now, it was in Indian, so you couldn't really tell, but the next thing, a presenter come over, another presenter come over from, I don't know, it would be maybe a private, more like other, you know, alternate news, whatever, came up and started kicking the bags and demonstrating that there was no bodies in the bags. It was just people had wrapped up these things to look like bodies, and was going irate. And then they started speaking in a bit in English. And it just showed you, and I've seen lots of things since then that really made you see things from a different perspective. And it just shows you how we can be boycotted. Now, that's because we're not there. We're only seeing visually one aspect. We're seeing what we think we see, and we're making up a story. And that's what media does. That's what psychology and TV, that's, if you think about how TV was formed and how it's all about getting the psychology of the story and using emotions, using imagery, using sounds, using things to trigger all the senses, right? But the reality is we're so used to being manipulated. Our senses are so used to being manipulated by artificial intelligence, right? That we are not using our own intelligence. We are conditioned every single day when we open our mobile phone, when we watch TV, when we open our computer, and even when we are taught something by someone else. It is just someone else's perception. One of the things that horrified me when I was doing a bit of research about quite a few things, I started to recognise how much a certain billionaire who's had his finger and who there's a lot of controversy about in relation to this certain, I'll just call it endemic. A person that there's been a lot of controversy, but we're not allowed to talk about. If if it's mentioned on social media, it's automatically banned. But what alarmed me more about this was the depths of not just censorship about what we're taught and whatever, but how much we are, how could you say, certain things are manipulated a certain way for us to think and believe a certain way, right? A certain narrative is taught a certain way, right? And how much is aimed at disempowering, and how AI is really pushed, and our dependency on AI, but also how much this particular person and his wife, who I'm not going to say the name, but his wife and him have been noticeably saying that they've been separated. He's one of the biggest billionaires in the world, or whatever you call millionaires. I'm sure it's billionaire, but anyway, how their organisation actually fund every medical, well, I think it was about 95% of the medical establishments around the world, and how much they actually have a say in what is taught in modern medicine. And this is what people have got to remember, that unfortunately, money and control and conditioning, some people are conditioned and they don't even realise they're conditioned. Mostly we're all conditioned to certain degrees, we don't realise condition. But a lot of artificial intelligence technology, of course it's great. In modern medicine, there's so many things, but there's a lot of things that have been hidden. There's a lot of things that we don't get to see because it doesn't suit. One of the examples is a lot of people don't realise that there's lots of things in natural medicine that constantly a big pH, which is to do with medicine, will try and push down to the surface all the time. They don't want people knowing because they can't make mega money from it. So things like, there's a thing called patents, and there's certain things you can't patent. So for example, one of the things that a lot of people don't realise, if your doctor gives you vitamins, they can't just give you vitamins. It doesn't work like that. They can't patent it. So for certain companies that provide your doctor, and you'll know what I'm talking about, it has to be patented. So how do they patent? They add all this crap, basically crap, things that are not good for you, in amongst that, and then they patent it to a certain, and that's the way things go. And this is how crazy society is, right? But going back to what I'm talking about is that when you start losing your intuition, you start using your sense of self, and you do not take time to listen to what your inner navigation system, when you don't use your own senses every single day and are so busy being being basically manipulated by AI and technology, you stop using your senses in the way that you were given them. Your senses stop functioning the way that they're supposed to function. So you actually get lazy, and you just allow yourself to believe everything that's going on about you, and you do not use your own discernment. One of the things I try and teach healers, I mean, I started being taught, for example, Reiki 30 years ago. I went on to study lots of more advanced forms of healing and different things. But one of the things that I talk about a lot to healers is about spiritual discernment, and even discerning opinions from other people, even other teachers, and really about building your own discernment muscles, because today people are easily influenced, just like celebrities. People today, it's really concerning how much people will listen to a celebrity. And listen, and the reason that is because that's manipulation, that is conditioning. So people and young people believe celebrities and will listen to celebrities just through conditioning and manipulation. The person that you should be listening to the most is yourself. And you can only do that when you start to build up discernment muscles, when you start getting out of your mind and you spend more time in stillness and with your intuition and with your body connecting in with that in a navigation system and using your senses for what they're meant to be, okay? Not to be manipulated by things or other people. So how can you start using, how can you start using your gifts more? So I do, as I say, believe that we're losing God's gifts for our six senses to the modern world, and I believe we're surrendering our sovereignty as human and spiritual beings over to science. And to take that back, things like meditation, things about being able to relax are really, really important, but recognizing at the core that you're a sovereign being and that you're a spiritual being. And the decisions that you make in life are between you and God, right? You and God and your spiritual decisions are your decisions. It's not often the government's trying to control you or other people. And far beyond even our physical senses, in that sense, to me, I ask God every single day for guidance and I make all my decisions. Okay, I'm saying all my decisions. I'm a human being, I make mistakes, right? But I try and make as many of my decisions every single day from a spiritual connection and getting guidance, right? And I've learned to use those discernment muscles and know when something feels really off and is not going to be right for me. I had to learn the hard way, and it was to do my life, because there were so many circumstances I was put into that nearly cost me my life. And one, again, it was a medical situation, but it was again anaesthetic. It was another nerve, lockjaw, sepsis, nobody listening to me. Then in ICU, again, the doctors using things that I was actually allergic to, and I nearly died. Now, that was a big lesson for me. Now, I had started to already not give, stop giving my power away, but I started to recognise how much we think, everyone else also, and most people think that often we give our power away to people every single day. And of course, there's certain situations you have to be able to trust your doctors and nurses for certain things, but sometimes there is something, alarm bells can go off, because sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes they're taking the wrong advice from someone else. Sometimes they're not doing the research, or they're only listening to one piece of research. They're not going out, right? Maybe at that point, science is not extended to a certain thing. That's just one example. But look at technology. Are we really going to let technology take over the human world so much that it's robots that control the world, because we're already going that way? Are we going to let gain of function? Do we really think it's correct to start letting these weird scientists who have got no moral compass to start experimenting with humans and mixing it with animal components? Do we really think that that is honouring our sovereignty? I don't think so. I think it's time that we all take back our God-given rights, and that has to start with our soul, our spirit, and the senses that we've been given to guide us, because it's our senses that, when we connect with God in our spirit and we spend more time in quiet, we hear what we're meant to do. We get a different sense of the world. But if we're distracted and conditioned by things that are meant to manipulate us, meant to stimulate our addictions and make us buy this, go and get that cake, go and get that alcohol, stimulate our indulgences, we are just being programmed. Someone's sitting pressing a button and is just pressing you. It's is basically, it's as well just sitting where we are like some buttons behind you telling you what to do and how to react. You're worth more than that. Every single one of you are worth more than that. So I think it's so important that we start looking at God's gifts of the six senses. Stop losing your senses, our inner compass, to modern science, technology, and medicine. Bye for now.